Welcome back to Vantage. With the SpaceX IPO, we thought we'd get something unusual on the show. I am delighted to be joined by Per Wimmer. Per, CEO of Wimmer Family Office, former colleague of mine. It's great to be back in contact with you. But also, importantly, you are the space guy, the astronaut. And we'll get into that. But let me just start by saying, look, I mean, the biggest IPO we've seen 2 weeks ago, and someone who sort of reserved a seat to go into space way back in 2004, and who's championed this sort of sector for over 2 decades. What ran through your head when that moment happened?
I was very excited for Elon, I know he's been through the war. He's really worked hard throughout, and had the ups and downs, and it came quite close. I think we have to remember that it actually came quite close to being a failure.
Yeah.
If we roll back the movie a bit, Elon, who is one who puts all on red and hopes for the best and work hard, he had enough money for 3 launches, Falcon 1.
Yeah.
The first one blew up, second one blew up, and the third one blew up. And what do we do then? So he was technically out of the business. And then what they did, and he did, is put the scraps or the spare parts of whatever was left from the other rockets together to rocket number 4.
Yeah.
Last saloon. And it made it. And it actually took off, and it actually was beautiful, and that then became the pivotal moment, which basically clinched a $1.5 billion contract from NASA, and then SpaceX was in business. But it could have been a terrible disaster, and look now where he's actually, gone way beyond that, and market cap is $2.5 trillion today. Well done him. So it's quite emotional, and because I have seen part of that journey, it's a little bit more personal. In fact, back in the days, in 2000, when I started as the first European to sign up for private space, I started to do my space training in Russia. In Star City, in Zhukovsky Air Base, I would fly MiGs, I would spin in the centrifuge there, all these sorts of things. In complete parallel track, there was this South African guy who showed up in jeans, sneakers, in a relatively formal setting at the Roscosmos.
Wow.
in Moscow. And they laughed at him. They thought he was a joke. And why was he there? Well, because he wanted to hitchhike on one of their rockets. And they were like, bugger off, no. Then he went back to America and came back again with my good friend Jim Cantrell and Michael Griffin, who later became NASA administrator. So he had real muscle this time around. He thought, this time we're going to clinch it. And they tried again. And famously, the guy from Roscosmos spat on Elon's shoes, like, get out of here, get lost. And that was sort of the final straw for Elon. It's like, okay, the Russians, we clearly can't do business there. I can't piggyback on their rockets, or I can't buy a company there. So on the plane ride back to America, together with Jim and Mike, Jim, my good friend, Elon came up with the idea, so listen, we got to start from scratch. We got to build our rocket company. And Jim literally put the first 5 people together on the back of Elon's sort of business plan, which was in his mind. And that company is called SpaceX today.
Wow. So you've been there from the origins, the beginning.
Very beginning.
Yeah, amazing.
And so I've seen the hardship, I've seen how close it's been. I mean, there was a point where even after PayPal, where Elon literally maxed out the credit cards and was couch surfing with friends. I know he still likes doing that, even though he's a trillionaire today, he still likes that. But he did it there out of necessity. So well done him. I mean, he's a guy who takes risk, works incredibly hard, puts all on red, and then goes for it. And look, that has made him a trillionaire today.
That's fantastic. So it's clearly brought space into into the imagination of the investing public at a much bigger scale. I know there were sort of niches that you could put money into, but it feels like this is a sort of interesting sort of transition point of space as an asset class. So, and I know that a lot of people who are looking for venture capital, etc., in this area, because you're the space guy, they will come and talk to you about it. Uh, Love to understand how you describe the sort of size and shape of the space economy today, and indeed what this event, the SpaceX IPO, does to catalyze it and where it's heading.
So the size of the global space economy today is about 600 billion.
Yeah.
It's sizable.
Yeah.
It's meaningful. It's real. There are beautiful, real businesses being built right now. SpaceX is the one with the yellow jersey on. It's the leader. It's the most visible. It's Elon we talk about. And why is that? Well, let's just look at this data. SpaceX accounts for about 50% of all global launches today, of any rocket.
Yeah.
The Falcon 9 has proven to be an absolute workhorse today. Absolutely. It was 165 launches last year. It's pretty good going without any glitches, whereas other rockets were blowing up a little bit here and there. So to account for 50% of any market is huge. From nothing, from all these troubles that we just described a minute ago. So that's amazing. And if you extrapolate from here, that 600 billion is going to go to 800 billion and to over $1 trillion in terms of market size by 2030 and by 2035. So the trajectory is very clear. We as human beings are going to be doing much, much more in space. Yeah. And why is that? Well, it's because technology advances, etc., and the cost of access to space is coming down very significantly. It used to cost $100,000 to take 1 kilogram of stuff into space. Yeah. That was the price. Today, you can bring a kilogram up for about $1,000 without too much pushing and shoving. And when Elon gets the Starship ready, which he's working on, it keeps blowing up a little bit at the moment, but he'll get it sorted eventually. You're going to be looking at $200 a kilogram. Yeah. $200 a kilogram. Yeah. That is transformational. And that means access to space is going to be much, much cheaper. And therefore, that's going to be a lot more going up there. Satellites, I mean, Elon's already got Starlink up there, of course. He's going to have 16,000 Starlink satellites eventually. Bezos is doing the same thing, etc., which is going to lead to a huge benefit for humankind. Better internet coverage in remote areas on the sea or in remote parts of Africa or in the jungle for that matter. You're going to see a lot more medical experiments that are going to take place in space because access is kind of cheaper, and it's much better for the pharmaceutical industry to do their trials in microgravity. Why? Because the crystals are perfect. You can make perfect crystals, which is very good for the pharmaceutical people, as opposed to on Earth where they get a little bit tweaked because of gravity. So huge benefits ahead, and therefore the market size will grow. Now, it wasn't always like that. And I remember in the early days of space, and this is up till, as an investor, up till 7-8 years ago, thereabouts. Investing into any space companies, private space companies, and in particular the launch companies, it was always a high net worth experience, and it was kind of putting money down a black hole because rockets kept blowing up a lot. Valuation was quite a crazy. It was just whatever you needed to be, and rarely was there a financial return. I used to invest in such space companies back then, not for financial gains, but to advance the whole space sector and eventually to go up there. Because I'm an astronaut. I want to go up there. I want to go to space and on private rockets. So I financed some of these companies. Not all of them went well. So that's just space for you. But that's how it was. It was high net worth and very enthusiastic people, rather than big institutions and things like that today. So there's a 180-degree change that has taken place gradually over the past 7-8 years. And that culminated with the SpaceX IPO. There we have really seen how institutionalized, how lots of family offices, lots of institutions, and now the listed community, public equity community, can now participate in the leading company. What a transformation.
Yeah, no, and amazing. And I think, the lowering of those sort of launch costs, the per kilogram costs, particularly when you look at things, I think a large part of the sort of appeal of the SpaceX story is what it can do with data centers when you've got this sort of, growth in AI. And the fact today is that you can't, there's planning constraints, demand on water, cooling, the noise, plenty of noise right now about putting data centers down here. If you can lower the cost and put them up into space, you could might get some transformational economics and competitive economics versus what you get down here on Earth. And I can see the bull case in that SpaceX controls the ability to actually get those up there.
I'm personally a little bit more hesitant
Yeah.
on the data centers in space, except when data centers in space are needed. So if you have stuff going on there with satellites and you need quick access to data centers for the purpose of things in space, then it makes sense. For humans on Earth, I would suggest build your data centers on Earth in some sort of cooling facility, because data centers need a lot of cooling, a lot of engineering, a lot of things can go down, a lot of maintenance, etc. To have it up there, I'm not sure that's the most efficient use of capital and efficient use of data centers, unless you need it up there. But when it comes to SpaceX as in its own right, where you have the AI and you have so many other aspects to SpaceX, the Starlink and what that's going to do. Starlink is a cash cow, big cash cow. If you do the DCF on Starlink, I mean, it could be transformational. And I know the IPO was done at 100 times revenues or something. So there's a lot of valuation premium for Elon. But one thing I will say is never bet against Elon. Mark my words. Mark my words. Because he is so smart. He's a true visionary. He's an incredibly clever engineer. He's a geek. But he will make it work. And yes, he will have problems. Yes, he will have challenges. And by the way, he loves that. But he will also figure out what to do with them. So that premium that's in there often is justified. At least we look back on history. So he will make it work. But maybe data centers will be ought to keep on planet Earth. But he'll come up with some other things that will make a lot of.
Okay. So and look, I mean, clearly one of the things. So this idea that you've got this dominant company in space is of interest in that, okay, it's now turning space into, critical infrastructure, the need for critical infrastructure. I thought it was interesting that, the need for another competitor is starting to surface. So, in Europe, you are starting to see the funding gap between the US and Europe starting to narrow because it is seen as important for sovereignty, critical infrastructure. Um, is there a risk that, we're just going to get this sort of monopolistic outcome, or do you think that we are going to end up in a world where, there are 2 or 3 alternative providers out there?
So today, SpaceX accounts for 50% of global launches. That's a fact. So they have really proven themselves, and the Falcon 9 is such a workhorse. Looking forward, that is going to change because you have so many other rocket providers coming up. You have Blue Origin, Jeff Bezos. He is powering ahead with his New Glenn, and I think that has potential. They had a hiccup on their last launch, but eventually he'll get that right. And he has a massive order backlog on things that needs to go up into space. In Europe, one of the leading European space companies, or launch companies, is ESA Aerospace out of Germany. They again have a massive backlog. I think their biggest challenge is not funding, is not clients or revenues. Their biggest challenge is actually engineering and scaling up industrially how to deliver all these rockets in time. I think that's the biggest challenge. So we're at the moment we are in a very big growth phase where there's a huge need for launch capabilities. There's not enough, and there's a significant backlog that's been built up. Now, maybe in 5 years' time, that will start to even out a little bit because you will get a lot more capabilities available. The demand will still be there, but pricing will have to adjust. And you're going to see, like in any other industry, you're going to see a low-cost airline, like we've seen in the airline industry, and you will see some premium, dare I say, flag carriers, but there'll be a differentiation there. But as that happens and as that market develops, as an investor, you're also going to see a huge space economy developing, which might throw up even better investment opportunities, such as services, where you hook up with some satellite, you get geo data about how it's going on with the agriculture, the weather, the traffic in front of the supermarkets, et cetera, where you can predict, you can keep an eye on, you can monitor, you can do things that are better, let alone all the pharmaceutical trials you can do or telecom, which is going to be better, bigger, and communication is going to be. So there's a lot of opportunities that this new space economy is opening up for. And arguably, the bigger commercial opportunities lies outside the taxi business of taking stuff up there. And
it's the data services.
it's this data services, it's the protection, the cyber protection. I mean, one company here in the UK, for instance, is doing some very interesting work on predicting threats that comes towards satellites. And that could be malicious threats from other governments. It could be solar flares or any kind of radiation that might threaten the satellites. I mean, things like that. If you can predict that and see it coming, you're going to be relatively price insensitive to that because you have something very precious up there. So whoever can help you with that, whether you are an intelligence agency or you're a commercial operator, you'll pay for that. So margins on those businesses, and therefore the free cash flow and the predictability, like in any kind of software business, how it used to be, at least before recently, is going to be very good and very compelling. So there'll be some fantastic businesses coming out of this.
I mean, I think this sort of combination of what SpaceX is. So I think it's something like 286 subsidiaries doing a range of different things. There is a launch business. You've got the satellite business, Starlink, and now you've got the AI arm, and you've recently had Cursor added on to that. And if there's this great Morgan Stanley video out there that talks about all the other things that might come. So, if through Tesla, if you can solve automation, etc., you solve automation in everything, except, and you connect that to the satellites, you can see where the sort of end story gets to. I just wonder, I mean, we've both been sort of finance guys, and your point around, there's plenty of people who look at the valuation and scratch their head and the naysayers. At the same time, you've got someone who has created a tremendous amount of value. He's good at, and I'm humble enough to say, but I think that you know who to back, right? So is that the fact that you have to sort of stretch your imagination and imagine what is possible without necessarily seeing it in the near-term financial numbers?
There certainly is a huge, I mean, Elon's imagination and his desire to invent and reinvent is huge. And he is genuinely a visionary, genuinely transformational. He's proven it, and watch that space. He's not finished. So there'll be more to come. I think if you look back and you see where he started, say, he made some money from PayPal. What do you do as a cool engineering guy? Well, you want to have a car company. You want to build some rockets. Why? Because that's fun. Cool cars, cool rockets. It's kind of cool. That's what you do. And obviously he's done that super well. And like you correctly said, he's then diversified, particularly the SpaceX business, enormously. So there's a lot of AI in the mix. And he's obviously done that. And as he has cleverly expanded the business remit of SpaceX. But what he has also implicitly created is increasingly a big moat around the businesses, because suddenly it turns out there are a lot of synergies between these things. And when you put it all together and you control these businesses, these verticals, you end up creating a much stronger competitive position, a moat against the businesses that are only in one of the verticals, because you're not just head to head, because he has an edge. He can do it cheaper. He can do it better. He has more access to R&D. He has a bigger budget. You know, his budget, I mean, Elon has capital on tap. He has a huge fan club out there. Before they went public, and I know this from the family office community, everybody was trying to bite their hands off to get access to SpaceX shares, because they knew it was going to be fabulous. And even though they're buying at 50 times revenues or something, which people might say, hold on, have you looked at the numbers? Well, it's now trading at more than 100 times revenues. And eventually it will catch up. So he has actually built up an incredible moat around it. And yeah, who knows what the future is going to bring, but I wouldn't bet against him.
Why do you think he went public?
I think he's been delaying it as long as possible. He did learn from his Tesla experience that actually running a public company can be a bit of a pain.
Yeah. Yeah.
It has this thing called constant shareholder pressure.
Yeah.
It has the stock market that has a mind of its
Rules,
own.
yeah, of course.
It has the SEC, which has got even more scrutiny, and there's a lot more transparency around it. And you can't just do anything you just feel like, including throwing out 423 or numbers like this is what I think it should be taken private for, without the SEC being quite upset about certain things. So it is different. Having said that, he's now reached a level where the market cap of SpaceX today is more than Amazon.
Yeah.
It's in the top 5 biggest companies in the world.
Yeah.
And obviously, if you do list, it gives you a currency. So a huge currency. So you have the ability to go shopping and buy up great other businesses, great other add-ons. So you can do M&A much better and use your highly priced 100 times revenue currency, your stock, to buy these businesses, therefore making SpaceX even more future-proof. So there comes a time. The reason why he went public was not for him personally, not for him to monetize his personal holdings. The funny thing, I mean, I used to hang out with Elon. He doesn't really care about money and as such, except as a tool to do stuff. And having a highly priced currency is a great tool to buy stuff. Not buy personal homes. I mean, his main home is a $50,000 IKEA flat pack. I mean, that's his main home in Texas, close to the factory. Yeah. So he can quickly taxi in and taxi out. That's it. It's not a castle. It's not what he cares about. So he's an interesting person who is more proud about his legacy, who is more about the future vision, and about, he looks at history and how he can transform history. How, you know, when we went from, you know, at the various stages of humankind, how he can now be a part of that, putting people on Mars, and et cetera, et cetera. That's what he cares about.
Okay. So for the people who can't quite bring themselves to pay for a $2 trillion valuation, but like the idea of, you know, okay, this is opening up the space economy. What are the ways of sort of playing it? You know, do you go down the value chain? So, okay, I'm going to find, you know, launch guys, satellite guys, data guys, or is there kind of picks and shovels type approach of just go to the suppliers who are supplying into that industry? What would be your sort of approach?
Yeah, depends who you are. If you are a retail investor who wants exposure to the space economy, you may want to have a little bit more diversified approach. And there are space ETFs that you can buy that are ready-made. They are liquid. You can trade them as shares, and you get a broad exposure. And therefore, you don't get as much volatility as you probably will get on a single stock like SpaceX. SpaceX will move up and down fairly violently, depending on the mood of the market. I mean, the market cap today is at 2.5 trillion. The stock was down 5%, but 5% move is nothing. It will go up and down, hopefully more up than down, but let's see. But there are other ways to access it. You can also build up your own little portfolio of private and listed space companies, and there's some fabulous ones out there that are doing incredibly great things. You got Rocket Lab, that's interesting. Axiom is powering ahead. It's still private, but it's powering ahead. Vast, interesting. Stoke Space, watch that one. It's quite interesting. They've actually built up on a shoestring, i.e. $500 million, but that's kind of shoestring in the space business.
Yeah.
But on a shoestring, they're going to be ready for launch. So there's some clever and very interesting businesses that are coming along in the space economy. And obviously, to a degree, they're being helped by NASA contracts or public contracts. But also private capital. They are genuinely supporting it because they can see how you can fit into this general trend of more space rather than less. All of that is available, but you've got to look at your risk profile depending on who you are. If you're a sophisticated family office or institutional investor, you would know how to manage the risk. You will have a private book. You will have some listed book. You might even want to have some ETFs as well. But you would know, or your risk manager would know, how you should balance that. As a retail investor, you got to think a little bit extra hard. I mean, it's not just a one-way stream. There are volatility in this thing, and you got to diversify. And space is volatile. It's a high beta sector, just like technology or biotech and things like that. This is not your Nestle's or your food manufacturers that are quite predictable, but for a part of your portfolio, absolutely.
Yeah. And actually, there's some good closed-end vehicles who've got, again, exposure. So Scottish Mortgage, Bailey Gifford, but some of those trusts. And also, we should mention Seraphim, a great success story here in the UK as well, which doesn't own SpaceX, but owns many other companies, which I think are going to benefit from that, right?
It does, yeah. They one company we sort of worked on in parallel a little bit, where we also shareholders, is Voyager Tech. We came in at the Series C at $1 billion valuation, and I know Seraphim has that one as well, and it went 4x on IPO 6 months later, so happy days. There are some great businesses to be had, but you got to do your homework.
Okay. Now, I know because you're a champion of the space sector, one of the things I wanted to explore was actually, funding of some of these smaller markets. So, and we have Edison, a champion of the smaller company as well. We want to get some of these sort of great SMEs sort of heard and understood. I was amazed that, when we were looking at Poland, we came across these amazing little businesses, Createch, Scanway, Liftera, and the UK's got also some sort of some great success. Filtronic's done amazingly well, effectively, but some emerging stories are starting to sort of come through. Do you think that there is a case for that actually you're going to see more sort of ventures, smaller ventures started to come through because of the SpaceX IPO?
I think so. I think high net worth are increasingly supportive of it because they can see there is a meaning for it. I mean, 15 years ago, it was very difficult to raise any money for this unless you are talking to space enthusiasts such as myself. Nowadays, you can. However, specific to the UK, we still have a problem, and that's more generic than the space sector. You can raise some EIS or VCT money, etc., that is tax efficient, and you get a little bit money going, so you can do certain things. But there is a funding gap until you go from that so little funding to the next bigger institutional funding. There still is a gap in the middle that's currently not being filled well enough, because it's still risky a little bit, but you need some bigger bucks to come in. In the US, there are an awful lot of capital available, private, family offices, and even sometimes public money from public funds, or indeed early revenues that you can lock in as such a company. And that fills that gap. In the UK, we have a big hole there. And therefore, it's sort of the funding trap sometimes where you have clever things that looks promising, but you just can't get that bigger capital funding put in place, equity funding typically, in order to get up to the next level. And that's why we're a little bit lacking sometimes in Europe. We're trying to catch up, but the funding gap is a problem if you talk to a lot of these great entrepreneurs. And therefore, very sadly, often they end up leaving and going to the US where the money is available if you incorporate here or if you bring your stuff here. So you still have a little bit of a brain drain as a result of that. It'll be good to see a little bit more public support in that difficult space to help these companies achieve more institutional grade status. And at that point, funding will definitely be available.
Okay. Now, you and I both grew up in a regime where compliance tells you you've got to make sure you look at the other side, right? You're a space enthusiast. I have to ask you, okay, what's it's volatile. I think you've sort of covered it off. But, what areas, what's the sort of biggest risk that you see in the sort of sector?
There's always a risk, particularly in the launch business, that suddenly you go through a period where rockets keep blowing up. And if they blow up with people in them, that doesn't make for pretty reading on the newspaper, or that will hit, bad news is great news for the news media. And whenever you have a big accident, I mean, go back to 2002 when we had the Columbia accident, etc. I mean, news coverage is extensive and enormous, and that creates a lot of very negative energy. And no doubt, investors will think twice if we went through a period where not just stuff blew up, because that's okay. When we see Starship blowing up, frequently, and that's okay. We can live with that. Or those spectacular, and Elon comes out and say it was a good success. Yeah. Why? Well, because we learned a lot. And that's a little bit their philosophy as well. They go about it differently to some of the big historic rocket builders like Boeing, etc. Because Boeing would be a lot more picture perfect, like, let's do this thing and let's try it. And boom, it didn't work, but we learned a lot. So it's a success. The moment you start to have real humans in, that blows up. That becomes a problem. So you got to watch that. And it will happen from time to time, unfortunately.
It is.
That's just the nature of it. We have lost 4 people in our space program, and it is tragic every time, but we must keep going on. But then you have beautiful moments such as Artemis 2 earlier this year, which completely reignited the interest in space globally. Everybody I talked to, and the taxi driver, friends, etc., certainly those that know that I'm an astronaut, they're like, oh, it's so exciting, isn't it? So exciting. We went to the dark side of the moon. Yeah, absolutely. This was the Apollo moment again. And it was very exciting. And you had constant TV coverage and everybody's talking about it. So that's very exciting. And that's where we got to get to. But no doubt there will be bumps in the road along the way. But the moment you start to see human casualties, unfortunately, that doesn't,
tough.
that
tough.
It's tough.
Fair enough. And I understand that does put risks and sort of curtails activity, and people got to sort that out before you move that on. And it's absolutely valid. Let's wrap up by talking about yourself, right? So when are you due up, or when are you hoping to?
I'm due to fly next year. So they are currently building the new and very, very beautiful Delta rocket in Arizona. Pleased to say that the buildings of the rocket is going super well, and that will keep going for the rest of this year. Then we have a window of test flights. We got to make sure the rocket is working. So we have some amazing test pilots who are going to do that for us. And once that's done and we are ready, then I'm going to strap myself in and I'll be off to space on one of the first flights on that one, finally. So very much looking forward to that.
I really hope, because I've been aware for a long time that this is what you really want to do. So I really genuinely hope, and I will be looking out for it, that it happens. And you've got a website that people can track that.
It's called wimmerspace.com. It's got all my space activities and other things as well. I'm an adventurer. My claim to fame was in 2008. Was the first person to skydive Mount Everest. So I've jumped Everest.
I have seen the video. Yeah, I have seen the video. And look, I mean, we I met you in a finance setting, okay, and then the space thing I came to learn about later. So I wanted to ask you that, beyond spreadsheets and beyond valuations, ultimately people do stuff because it matters, right? And space clearly matters to you. Why does it matter? What is it that sort of motivates you about it?
Space is my passion, as you probably realize by now. And I just find it terribly exciting. As an adventurer who have lived with the Indians in the Amazon jungle, who've skied at the highest skiing station in the world, 5,500 meters, who's jumped Everest in a skydive, done all these sort of crazy things. Space is the ultimate frontier. It's the final frontier. And we as humans must never stop learning. I have a deep inner desire to learn in a broader sense.
Yeah.
I've got 4 master degrees. I was very greedy in a university setting, but I'm also very greedy in learning out there in real life. And that's why I've been to half of the Earth's countries, learning about cultures, habits, ways of thinking, different to where I grew up in Denmark. So I love learning and learning about space and helping push the frontier for humankind further out. That is truly exciting. And that's something that gives you a great pleasure, and something you can't put a money value on. It's just what life is about. It's pushing that frontier. It's making life better for people on Earth. You can say indirectly by us funding some of these early rockets, we are indirectly subsidizing better things for humankind in general, because there's going to be better medicine, better trials, cheaper access to space, better telecommunications. People might not realize that, but that is the fact. And we know that. So space has an enormous potential, and it also has an enormous potential to inspire. When you see astronauts going into space and you're a little kid in school, you're like, wow, this is so cool. And you inspire these kids to be more interested in STEM, in sciences, etc. And we need more of that. We need more engineers. We need more clever people for the future. And therefore, space holds a huge potential to doing that. So for all of those reasons, I'm so keen to going into space and push the final frontier.
This has been a really special episode of Vantage. Firstly, thank you so much for agreeing to do it. And I would love to get you back on maybe after you've actually gone up, and you can come back and we'll be able to reflect on a couple of things. One, a dream fulfilled. But also, SpaceX will be out there for a longer, etc. And we could revisit where the space economy has gone to. Per, thank you very, very much for coming on to Vantage.
It was a wonderful pleasure. And may I just finish with my 7 fundamental values to leave your viewers with some outside space good advice.
Yeah, sure.
Number 1, think out of the box. Always be open to new ideas. Number 2, follow your heart, follow your passion, and have fun doing it. And when you figure out what it is you want to do, space or otherwise, stop talking about it. Get on with that. Yeah. Execute, 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 execute. And as you do that, and this is number 4, manage the time and be time disciplined so your value corresponds to how you spend your time. And number 5, do it with great people in great teamwork. So 1 + 1 + 1 = 5. You create synergies. And do it in a manner where the risk reward, and this is from finance, value number 6, corresponds to your risk profile.
Yeah.
Some have lower risk profiles, some have higher. For me, going to space is the ultimate dream, so I'm willing to take a bit more risk. Not everybody is okay with that. That's okay. Just watch and support my trip. And number 7, and the most important ones, whatever you do, remember to inspire others and give back.
Yeah.
We do that through the charities. You should do the same in a small or bigger scale. Then you have the recipe for a very happy life. See you in space.
Great advice. Thank you, Per.